Welcome again to another episode of Constructive Conversations, where I sit with professionals that contribute to the design world. And today we have a special professional with us, Miss Selva Edwards. She is a landscape architect. Yes, a landscape architect. Thank you for being here. Tell me, I just want to dive straight into, the field about landscape. I've noticed a lot of persons don't know what,
That's so true.
the,
True.
the profession of a landscape architect. So tell us a little bit about the profession.
Okay, what is a landscape architect? What could I say? It is a field that combines art, creativity, science, in terms of like ecology, engineering, in terms of the construction field, and sort of brings it all together in a sort of a holistic manner. Landscape architects, we look first and foremost at a site. So it doesn't matter whether the site is small or whether the site is 100 acres. We look in terms of how that site is best well developed.
Okay.
And in terms of even working, like, for example, like we're doing a housing project. People tend to do, I shouldn't say people, other professionals.
Yeah.
They tend to do layouts where everything is a straight road, the house is facing the road. And sometimes, because we do a lot of site analysis, we find that sometimes if you just twist that house a little bit, the effect you get maybe is it opens up a view to something else.
Okay, yeah.
Also in terms of the light, there's sunrise and there's sunset, right? So where does a person use most of in the house, like a residential, if it's a residential, situation, what does a person do with a family? Maybe they come on evenings and they tend to sit on a deck. How is the deck facing?
Yeah.
Right? Is it that you want the sun going down in your face, or rather the deck on the other side,
Right.
where it's cool and you're away from the sun? So it's just in terms of looking in terms of how a site functions, in terms of the sustainability of the site as well, because you want to look in terms of the ecology, and the science part comes in as like, okay, where are you building this project? What sort of soil is it on?
Okay.
What could be done to amend certain things? So it's really a profession that combines those into a creative output.
Okay. I know I've heard some persons talk about wanting to hire maybe just like a gardener or somebody of this sort just to do the landscape design, what they would consider a landscape design, but you are much more than that. You consider a lot more elements to design with than just the actual planting. Question, do you all actually get into the actual planting, the doing of the work?
Well, not always.
Okay.
Not always, because a lot of projects that I work on as a landscape architect, basically, which is not always the best output for me, because you're hired to do plans. So you do all the plans, you do the construction details, and you hand it over. And sometimes it goes out to tender. Okay. And then that's the end of it. So like, you don't really know what's the outcome and the final outcome of that project. And that I find is not too pleasurable for me.
Right.
That I don't mind. It's not that I necessarily want to go there. I do go there sometimes and walk around. Yeah.
Okay, nice.
How the place is. I may not actually be digging the soil, but I can look and I can make changes when I'm on the site.
Okay.
Because sometimes you do like a planting plan. When you get on the site, you realize, if I shift this a little bit this way, maybe the view from here is better, or maybe it's better in that particular area. So that is a part of it. But no, we are not gardeners.
Right. Okay.
We do plans and we do construction details.
So it's more the design.
It's more technical, design and the technical part of it. So, I mean, for a homeowner, most homeowners will think, I can't afford a landscape architect. Sometimes I would say, listen, I can do a plan for you. I can tell you what plants to get, because most times the gardener does not know anything about plants. Or his palette is very limited.
Right.
So I could give you an idea of what plants that should be placed where based on what you want. And sometimes I just give you a field one for doing that.
Okay.
And you could carry on from there.
Okay.
So it's not always like I'm involved all the way through the project, because then it will become probably too costly.
Okay. So tell me, in terms of value, now that you've explained to us what you do, what value does a landscape architect really bring to any project?
All right. Well, one, a landscape architect should really be involved in a project from the inception.
From the
And
inception.
not brought in after all the design is complete and just asked to be involved at that stage.
Oh boy.
Because a lot of what we do, because again of the science part of it, the width and the span of what we do can bring value to any project. Because there are many different types of projects that we could be involved in. For instance, in this time that we live in, and we help restore wetland areas.
Okay.
We do a lot of stormwater management, and I have actually done a couple seminar night things, not in Trinidad, seminars out Trinidad, where I had to talk about the value of being able to understand the site in order to control the stormwater in the site, right? So stormwater management, because most people don't understand that. And they would build a home and they would pave the whole area.
Okay.
Because they don't want plants. Maybe if you want to pave it, yes, but then there's also the value of what you use, whether it's permeable, semi-permeable materials and all that allows nature and water to do what it wants to do.
Okay.
So it's a part of it to me is educating people about things like that. So you have that. We also get involved a lot in erosion control. Some of my projects have been with engineers on erosion control because you have different measures of erosion control.
Okay.
Hard and soft measures of controlling erosion as well, right? Again.
And that would be for bigger projects, maybe commercial projects.
Commercial projects. I mean, I've worked in a couple seaside areas.
Oh, okay.
With Captiville, where the idea was with engineers, because there was a lot of erosion, and we go in and we try to stabilize the slopes and all that.
Oh, okay.
So that is part of what we do.
That's also interesting.
Yeah. Also, I mean, residential design, yes, but it's just getting a landscape architect on a project, because sometimes I think we see things a bit differently just based on the training. And so we can therefore apply sometimes measures that maybe other professionals don't necessarily think of, and do it in a creative way.
Okay.
Right? So yes, I'm talking about stormwater management and all that, but it's not just, okay, we go in and we just say, okay, maybe we should use some grass pavers or something, which maybe we can, but that is part again of the design.
Okay.
And again, trying to bring that value to the project, especially in the light of where we are now in terms of sustainable environments.
Okay.
Right? So it's important in that way. Of course, there are other things that landscape architects do. I don't know if you know about the whole field of horticultural therapy.
Not exactly.
And horticultural therapy is a whole area where the research has shown that people just being exposed to nature, or plants, heals. They say people actually who are given a view of a natural area in a hospital room, or even if you bring fresh flowers to that person, they heal faster.
Wow.
So they've done a lot of research. It's there, right? It's not something that's made up. And then again, they say plants affect people both physically, physiologically, and psychologically. That again is part of horticultural therapy.
And you bring that knowledge, that value into
a project. So again, that is all part of it. So that goes into like maybe hospital design, or maybe just healing environments, kids with autism as well.
Yes, I'm thinking.
Yes, because you have to also, when you do things like autism, one of my projects I worked with some of the students a couple of years ago was at the Autistic Center. And you have to then, again, do your research, because I don't have any knowledge about autism. But then, listen to them talk, you realize that kids need certain things, when depending on what area of the spectrum they're on.
Right.
And one of the things was, some of the kids like to feel like if they're in a small space, cocoon areas they call them, right? So when you're doing your design again, you're creating a space where a child like that wants to be enclosed, and he feels safe. Whereas another child may experience a lot of discomfort if you use a lot of bright colors. So again, in doing that in your design, you realize, okay, I'm going to use muted shades. Like we may say, you go towards a monochromatic sort of design theme, so that it's more comfortable and relaxing. So that is part of it.
But you're using these terms, and I'm thinking of the field of interior design. So you work closely with other professionals in that regard.
Yeah, I work closely with other architects. I have worked with interior designers. I worked with engineers. Engineers seem to like what I do because they don't want to think about the soft part of what they're doing. so I work with quite a few engineers, and they just said, okay, you go ahead and you just do that. So I've worked on, different areas doing wardrobe design, and again, as I said, stormwater, sort of control and all that. So that is part of
design.
what I do. So that is part of the value. You know, and I think because of where we are now, sustainability.
You have to
of
think
the
about
environment
it.
all
You
the
have
time.
to think about
You
it
have to think
from
about
up front. I like how you said from up front, not just calling you in after the fact. Yeah.
You know, and say, okay, just do that. But you can actually bring a lot of value into the project that way.
Wow.
Right. Another area that, you know, is of interest to a lot of landscape architects is the area in biophilic design, where it has been proven that man, before we got to be where we are now as modern man, was just totally connected to nature. Was totally connected to nature. And so the idea now that has been growing is that we're doing a building, we're doing a house. How do we connect the indoors to the outdoors?
Yes.
So it feels sort of seamless.
Yes.
You can almost move from one end to the next, right? And again, that has proven to have really beneficial and positive effects on us as human beings, right?
I'm saying the same thing. I'm saying the same thing in design. It's so good to connect the indoors to the outdoors and not just treat them as two separate entities.
Yeah. Because the environment was there before we were.
Yeah. And we're invading the space. So, you know, we should incorporate it in design.
Yes. I agree with you. So therefore you have that connection between, you know, the indoors and the outdoors, and even now using things like that sort of green environment, even with children, like and in learning and all that. If you teach a child from young, they are part of this environment. They also learn to treasure it and maybe respect it.
Yes.
Because you know we do not have a lot of respect for the environment.
Yes.
We develop in an area, and the idea is you go in as contractors, which I really wish all the time I could help, and they clear the entire site of every single thing that's green.
Yes.
Exposing the soil.
Yes.
And not realizing they're causing erosion. And when it floods down there, somebody has to get the blame.
Yeah.
Right? When they themselves are a big part of it. You know, so that is part of the whole idea of
I like the harmony. I'm all for harmony. I've always said to myself when I'm approaching a project, think about the harmony, the indoors and the outdoors, the users of the space, but also what we meet on site. You know?
Yes. That is the other thing. You have to look at what you meet on site. There's no reason why you have to clear a site of all the vegetation. Bring someone in who maybe has some knowledge of some value. You shouldn't have a tree that has been there for 75 years and you walk in and you cut it down. You know,
Thank you for saying it.
No, you don't have to. If you have design on paper. If your walkway was going through where the tree was, turn the walkway in another direction.
Yeah.
Don't remove something that has value, that is holding the soil together and helping continue, create that stability.
And you say that because I'm thinking, I've met so many persons that just want a space, that just like in terms of residential design, they just want a house, they just want a space, that they don't really consider all these other aspects of the design, of what is around, of nature, etc. The views, as you talked about before. And then sometimes, you explain that to our clients and they're like, okay, well, what was the sense of that? I'm going to live indoors.
Yeah.
Persons say they live inside, they don't live outside.
People is not comfortable outside. Trees and all that affect microclimate. So you could actually create areas that are quite cooler, much cooler and more comfortable outside.
Yeah.
And you use it more.
Yeah, but you have to bring in someone as experienced as yourself to really bring that project together from the start.
From the start.
So tell us, what advice then would you give to a developer or a designer or homeowner when starting a project?
First thing I always think about, again, you have to analyze your site. So we call that site analysis. You have to see what the site has to offer. And when I say site, yes, the site that you're developing, but the site is part of a wider area as well. So in terms of the development of a site, or if you're building a house, always consider whether it's your neighbors or whether it's the areas that close to where you are.
Yeah.
So that the value maybe of those could be brought. Sometimes it could be that there's a beautiful view somewhere, if I put this tree here, it might block it. Or if I put this wall that high, it might affect it.
Right.
So people think a lot about safety and all that now, of course, we have to, right? But they could still approach it in a way that brings more value and more sensitivity in a way to the project, right?
Okay.
In terms of developers, again, as a developer, we know town and country planning always says, depending on how much houses you have, they're supposed to have an open space.
All right, a certain percentage.
Percentage.
Right.
So what they do is they leave something open.
Okay.
And most developers don't develop the space. That would add value to the project. That also creates a kind of social interaction between people who live in the area.
Okay.
Allow kids to get together and know each other. Because if you create a park, instead of just leaving it blank, right?
Right.
If you design that open space
Right.
as an area where people can jog, that is lit properly, you know,
Right. Yeah. True.
so that it's more safe, you will find that the neighbors begin to know each other. You have places where neighbors don't know each other.
Yes.
Because there's nowhere for them to meet.
Yeah. Correct.
But if you have an open space and you can design it in that way and develop in that way, it also adds safety, because the more people use a space, the safer the area becomes.
Okay.
So just by utilizing the space, you have some people jogging. You might have people doing exercise. You have people just talking, sitting down, looking at kids play.
Yeah.
So to me, it's important as a developer when you're doing spaces like that. Yes, everything is about money, the bottom line, but you can think about the value that you're adding to the project.
Right,
When you're building a community,
yes,
in a way.
Because I think of certain communities, and there are pockets of green, but again, it's not well developed, so it's just overrun by
weeds, right?
Weeds,
and nobody's maintaining
and
it.
Nobody's
either,
maintaining
right?
And so as a result, you don't want to come to this space
No.
because you don't feel safe.
You don't feel safe.
Yeah.
So, it's just well thought out, design, little issues like that, and I don't think has to be particularly so costly,
Okay.
but can add value, and not financial value in a way to the projects. It also adds that social value, which is so important in terms of sustainable environment, allow people to interact with each other.
Yeah.
It can be used for a community garden.
Right.
Okay, in terms of like a residential, like a private home.
Private
owner,
home,
right?
yes.
Again, just the guidance in terms of how you can get the best value from your site, right? In terms, I always say in terms of layout, depending on the space, you may not have a lot of space, so you may not be able to say, I have a thing with cars that I see as soon as I drive past a house. So if I could place a car along the side somewhere where I do have a direct view of it, if you have enough space,
yes.
that would be something that I would love to do. But then again, in terms of looking at, okay, you have a driveway, you have a walkway, how do you treat those spaces? Does it have to be just concrete?
Yeah. Oh boy.
Why can't we use, semi-permeable materials that allow water to flow through?
Yeah.
Sometimes instead of just a concrete drain, you can create what we call swales, which is a drain, but it's a grass drain. So water collects based on the angle, it's a collection point, but the water goes through. Of course, it depends on the type of soil you have, because that may not go so well if it's a high area that's high and clean, where the water will kind of still pool in a way, right? But there are ways again of adjusting that. So issues like that, again, in terms of lighting, you have different levels of lighting again, based on the home, based on the extent of the property, because you don't want to have too much lighting. As we say, lighting can be almost obnoxious if it's just everything is brightly lit.
Okay.
But if you have a pathway that you want to sort of define, you can have path lighting.
Yeah.
If you have a tree in your property that is of interest to you, you can have up lighting, and that looks so beautiful, especially at night.
Yes.
If you have a deck, you can have recessed lighting on the deck that again creates a sort of safety area, because you can see where you're walking to, but yet it's not out there in your face, glaring all the time. Like everybody tends to have these bright lights. People can see with less bright lights anyway, because it's still visible. But they tell us we have to have these bright lights, and sometimes it's so distracting. And to your neighbors as well. Your neighbor just see this very bright light. So lighting too is a very important thing in terms of how you can use light and create a nice ambience.
I think which is something as well. Persons don't necessarily think about or value the whole. So that is the lighting aspect. I'm very interested in lighting design.
So lighting is important. Again, in terms of the planting design, it depends on how the homeowner, who's the homeowner. There are people who love plants. If you love plants and they want to be in your garden every day, you can create a beautiful garden with flowering plants that they might have to
big or small.
Big or small. If it's a small space, you can have a vertical garden. There are vertical gardens now where you can actually build gardens that are not necessary or taking up a lot of space, but still adding value in terms of the aesthetic value and allowing the person to interact with it. So you have lots of different ways that you can.
I like that. So my last question is in relation to climate change, because we're speaking so much about the outdoors, etc. How can a landscape architect contribute to climate change mitigation?
But when we talk about climate change, we talk about the results of climate change that we're seeing now. So we talk a lot about we're seeing wildfires. We're seeing sea level rise. We have rising temperatures, which is happening over and over again within cities, right? In terms of a landscape architect, I'll have to say design planner, kind of interchange. They have been looking, like the previous trend was towards suburban living. Everybody lives out in the suburbs, in their own little house. They drive miles and miles to get to where they go. You see it right here in Trinidad.
Yeah, you do.
That's why the traffic situation, which is another story, is as it is.
Yes.
So what has been looked at in recent years, we haven't quite adapted it yet, but it's done in other places, is building sustainable cities. So in other words, people live, work, and play in an area close to where they are.
Yeah.
What does that do? It slows down all the carbon emissions and all that contribute to climate change. So you have less people driving less than using vehicle less. They talk also about creating walkable cities.
Yes.
Right? So the walkable city has to have a center in a place where maybe within a mile from there, in any direction, you should be able to find everything that you need easily. Yeah. Right? So again, it's encouraging people to walk. In doing that, of course, you have to build comfortable spaces for people to walk. So that's where greening of the environment in terms of trees, planting more trees.
Yeah.
Because we go to places if we travel and we walk a lot more than we do here, and we say, why are we walking that much? Yeah. Because it's a tree covered walkway.
Yeah.
And you feel cooler.
Yes.
You don't have the sun burning down on you and all that, right?
But this is stepping more into urban planning.
Well, it's urban. It's kind of very connected because it's urban design, which and landscape architects are also very involved.
Okay,
right.
Gotcha.
So in terms of more, leaning towards more of the landscape architects again, we have things like green roofs and green walls,
right,
which are used again to bring temperatures down, to make the building function better in terms of using less energy, right? So they've proven that use less money, less energy being wasted on air conditions. Right, less cooling is needed when you have a green roof and a green wall. The green roof and the green wall contributes to stormwater management again. So the water is absorbed on the roof because you have a roof there with growing stuff. So you have less water getting to the ground and running off and flooding.
Yes.
Don't we need that here in Trinidad?
No, we don't need any more flooding.
We don't need any more flooding.
No more.
Green roofs help amend that by absorbing that moisture and creating areas that less moisture actually gets into the ground. Another part of, in terms of, which again is stormwater management, but that relates directly to flooding, which is again part of climate change.
Yeah.
We have more flooding. What do you do about all this flooding? Part of it. We know that we have development on the hillside not done well, and the water runs off, right?
Straight
There
up.
should be collection points. I always say off the northern range, I don't know, other people don't see it. You create detention or retention areas that holds the water before it gets to the city. So again, you have less runoff. So it's not that you're not going to find water reaching other areas, but it's going to be slowed down.
Okay.
Right? So in terms of development, like even on a hillside and all that, how you do it, you see it in other places. They create ponds. The ponds sometimes become recreational areas because they hold the water.
Yeah.
Right? And it doesn't just run off. You have other ponds that would hold the water for a couple of days and it trickles down. It slows down the runoff.
Okay.
So that is a great part of how you can utilize that in order to build a more in a response, I should say, to climate change and what we're experiencing right now.
Okay. My last question. I said that the other question was my last question.
Yes,
in response to COVID-19, from a design aspect, what is your response as a landscape architect to the COVID-19 situation?
Well, again, it has been interesting listening to the conversations that go around. So COVID-19 came, is in March, we had the lockdown, right?
Yes.
And we just had to stay at home. At first, a lot of people just stayed at home. Nobody was going to work. Nobody was going socializing anywhere. What happened? All of a sudden, everybody was planting. Whether they were planting food
Yeah.
or whether they were like me, who has more plants than I need. Now I find reasons for needing them. So people started automatically connecting to nature in a way. Nature in a way, whether it was for food or whether it was just for pleasure, people started connecting to nature. And so again, what is happening to because of COVID, as I said, a lot of people are isolated. Maybe a lot of people feel stressed because they can't go to places and interact with other, maybe even families and friends. So the response to that is, again, being immersed in nature.
Yes.
Around you, whether you can actually get out and go somewhere and just walk somewhere green, that's a whole thing by itself. Whole forest, there's forest bathing and nice words like that. That we know, and grounding therapy. We know
yes, I think I heard about grounding therapy.
Which our great-grandparents and they used to do. And we walk outside barefoot.
Yeah.
We don't do it, we put on shoes or rubber boots, which breaks that surface, that interaction, But I think a lot of people just automatically, again, as we talked about before, just with biophilic design, being automatically connected to nature, people just kind of got into that groove.
Yes.
I have people who never planted a seed. And all of a sudden they have vegetable gardens.
Yes.
I'm like, how did that happen? So I think, in terms of the COVID-19 response, I think it brought positives. There are negatives, but there are a lot of positives. And I think it will also be a game changer in the way people think about the environment going forward.
Yes, I think so. I believe that as well.
Yeah, it will be a game changer because you're just seeing it happening around you all the time and in places that you never really expected it to happen,
Yeah.
So it's a game changer. So that's the response again, just looking at people and again advising. And as I keep saying, start in preschool and inform the children. 3-year-olds very smart. Start informing them from age 3 what this is all about. How we are part of this universe.
How we could work together, we could connect, how we could harmonize. Wow.
Yes.
But this has definitely been an informative, enlightening conversation. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Miss Edwards.
I enjoyed it too.
Yeah, for so much information. It's really a lot to consider. And being in the field of design, I'm learning more about the value now that we've definitely had this conversation about landscape architecture. I hope that you will have gathered a lot from it. Feel free to share this video, like it, and follow my page for more episodes of Constructive Conversations. Until the next time.